Hi, Dr. Patterson. Thank you so much for being with us again today. How are you?
Well, I'm fine. Again, hello to you, Dr. Collins. It's good to see you again, to participate in another interview with you. And this, on behalf of fellow patients, I wish to thank all of you who have arranged these interviews for us and the opportunity of sharing our experiences with other patients. I'm very grateful for that.
Okay, and I'm already getting feedback from some of the patients who are listening, and it's all very good feedback. Not only asking more questions about some of the topics, which is what informs us today for our next interview, but also saying that it's helped them because, as you always say, it's one of the first things you need to know is that you're not alone in your travels. You're not alone with this disease. There's so many people out there to help you. So,
well, this is a very important point, because I think that with a program like this and with an interview like this, where we patients can in real time relate to each other, and the opportunity of sharing our experiences with other patients. One thing is that there is a commonality of this. We're all down in the trenches together, trying to survive and helping each other survive. And this, to me, is one of the biggest insights I have on a patient-to-patient relationship, and the opportunity on an interview like this, where we share information, coping methodology, and so forth.
So I'd like to share with you that one piece of feedback that I received is that you sound so positive, having overcome the cancer diagnosis, that I wasn't sure from one patient that they understood that it didn't just happen magically. It was a difficult course, just like any other patient. In fact, one of the things in my mind that makes it so much like any other patient is that you shared with me that for a year before your diagnosis, you actually had symptoms.
Yes, that's something you and I have talked about before. I think from the early 1930s, in the Depression, we were programmed back then to see to the needs of other people first and ourselves last. We were programmed. The churches did that. Societal programming did that. And finally, eventually, we began to realize that when an airplane was having trouble and the oxygen mask came down, the first things that the stewardess would say, put your mask on first. But we were programmed from 1930 on, no, you put other masks on first and yourself last. And the stewardess will diplomatically point out, if you put other masks on first, you're going to pass out before you have a chance to stay alive yourself. So we have to make sure that our own survival is number one. Otherwise, we don't have a foundation to go out and be of service to other people. And that's what I learned. My doubles partner and I both learned this. We both were products of an outdated social pressure of seeing to the needs of other people and ourselves last. That's backwards. That's backwards. Number one priority in the lives of all of us, and what my Stanford and I learned, is that our physical and emotional survival should be the number one priority in our lives. Then and only then will we have a foundation where we can go out and be of service to others and the rest of the world. That was a big wake-up call. The other thing is, we found out, and I especially, I didn't pay attention to the early warning symptoms that I was developing an illness. Oh. I thought, like a typical arrogant male, I said, well, I can gut my way through this. Well, in the process, I lost 1 or 2 years in the diagnosis of stomach cancer because I tried to, quote, gut my way through. Instead, I should have gone, listen to my body, get help. And this is why women live longer than men. Women listen to their bodies far better than men do. As a result, they often get their diagnosis of an illness, especially cancer, much earlier than a man with the same illness. That was a big learning curve for me right there.
Right. And in talking about that, I just want to stress that when you realized you had been ignoring these body symptoms, ignoring, as you say, the early warning signs of the disease, and then you got such a terrible diagnosis, it wasn't immediate. But as you began to realize what you were dealing with, you started to get information. So instead of blaming yourself for putting it off for a year, for not paying attention to your body, somehow you turned your energy towards getting actively involved in your diagnosis and your care. Can you talk about that?
Yes, as through those very difficult times, I had to take one step at a time, but I began to realize that, as you pointed out to me, that it was an information time, information gathering together. I realized I just can't delegate this to the doctors. I've got to be part of a doctor-patient team, and that meant I had to know as much about my stomach cancer as possible, what the prognosis was, what are the treatment options, and so forth. But I had to get information, and that's the thing that has driven me ever since. And that's what I've shared with fellow patients ever since. Number one, get information and then be an active part of the patient-doctor team to carry out whatever the doctor says. But if you have a doubt about it, then get a second opinion. Become proactive in a participation with a doctor-patient relationship. If you feel you want another opinion, it's your prerogative. Get a second opinion. But get information that will satisfy your emotional response to your crisis right there.
Mm-hmm. And for the patient who's listening, in my mind, you had an example of an excellent patient-doctor relationship with your surgeon. You know, some of our surgeons, I've noticed, will take the paper on the exam table and they'll draw a picture of what they're going to do in surgery. And the patient, they don't know surgery, but that's a very beautiful gesture of explanation. You have a similar example that has to do with surgery drawings. I really like for you to share that example.
Okay, you remember the story I told you about the surgeon at Memorial Sloan Cancer Hospital in New York?
Yes.
That's where I was sent.
Uh-huh.
And because of my medical background, I drew up several diagrams on a piece of paper of the different types of surgery, Bill Roth 1, 2, and 3. And when the doctor came in, he got down to my level. His name was Dr. Murray Brennan at Memorial Sloan Kettering. Came in and he said, "My name is Murray Brennan." He didn't say doctor. I knew he was, but he came down to my level. And then I showed him the different diagrams of possible surgical procedures, how much of the stomach, what would be the other choices there. But then he interrupted me, and he had 10 to 15 Japanese surgeons from Tokyo, Japan. I think that's what you're talking about.
Oh yes, this
and they suddenly interrupted Dr. Brennan, and they had a very, very active, almost contentious discussion. And Dr. Brennan said, "Reese, I'm going to have to take these visiting dignitaries from Tokyo on a tour, but after that, I'll come back, we'll sit down, and I'm going to go over the diagram and answer the questions that you need to have." About an hour later, then he came back, and he sat down. He says, "I know what you want to know. What were the Tokyo doctors upset about?" He said, what they were upset about, they were shocked that I sat there and listened to a patient ask so many questions, even with a diagram, and wanted to talk to me later about the options. They said, "In Tokyo, we don't do that. We don't want the patient to talk back. We tell them what it is, walk out, and that's it." Then he said, "Be grateful that you're in New York and not Tokyo." I said, okay. But the thing is, he took the time to answer the questions, and that gave me the peace of mind. Next day, did a total gastrectomy. They took out my entire stomach, my lower esophagus, part of my intestines. but the cancer had already spread into the abdominal cavity. And so, as he said, we've done all we can, but the prognosis is not good. Well, I knew that. But I respected him. I knew he would answer every question that I asked. And that really gave me the confidence and the peace of mind to know I've done as much as I can on my side. Now I'll have to wait and let them carry out their responsibility.
Okay. So I've heard you at times talk about the medical equation, which part of it being the human factor, the other part is the technical factor. And that sounds exactly what you're talking about right there. The human and the medical factor in the medical equation.
I think with the equation, it's important for the professionals, of course, to carry out their professional expertise. And we, the patient, have to ask questions. Don't be afraid. You should ask questions. Make sure you understand the disease, the options, and what they plan to do. The second part of the equation is the patient's responsibility. And that's where we as patients must insist on being part of the patient-doctor team, working together, and all the options and treatment be on the table, but the patient must be a part of the medical team. Then you'll have the peace of mind to know that you've done everything you can on your end of that equation. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Then if you have any questions, don't hesitate to get a second opinion.
Mm-hmm. And see, this is how, as you said, all the patients are really down in the trenches together. And after you had your surgery, you had a lot of trouble. You lost a massive amount of weight. You were having a hard time figuring out how to eat. Your tennis partner tries to get you back playing tennis, and you both ended up with a terminal illness, which you ended up turning your attention away from the illness, but towards living. Can you explain? Because that's the key for a patient, right? To turn their focus.
Cindy, that was a real learning experience for both me and my doubles partner, Stan Ford. Mine was in 1987. 2 years later, he came down with a terminal syndrome, Wegener syndrome. It's an autoimmune syndrome. So we both had a death sentence. There was very little hope for either one of us. But we found a camaraderie of working together to support each other. And we both believe in exercise. We got into exercise. And then we got back slowly into tennis. That it gave us pleasure and joy because that's what we had known when we had a normal life earlier. And it was the exercise, the camaraderie of sharing the coping experiences. And what happened once we started the process, and you and I have talked about this, if you can actually participate in your ongoing recovery, then your quality of life improves. And that's what we experienced. The quality of life got better when we tried to exercise. We were pitiful at first because we had won national tournaments previously, but we had to go back to square one. But little by little, as we exercised and with the help of each other, to our amazement, we got better. We began to put on weight. We got stronger. And then once you improve and you actually participate in your recovery, then the quality of life gets better. And once that happened, Cindy, you enhance the possibility of living longer or even surviving. That last sentence, I want everybody to pay attention to. If you participate and you actively participate in your recovery effort, that will improve the quality of life. And once that happens, it enhances the possibility of you living longer or even surviving. Stan Ford and Reese Patterson are alive today. I'm convinced of that formula right there. I think that's what kept us going. So there's hope for all of us out there. Don't give up. There's always hope. And then as we we began winning national tournaments again, they didn't know what to make of this. They were convinced we were on drugs or something that illegal because we were supposed to have died. We were on the front page of the New York Times sports section in 1991, and they said on there, Ford and Patterson, not dead yet. And every day they carried a story. Every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right on through, they're still here. They're still alive. And when we won the tournament, they couldn't believe it. And we couldn't believe it either. But one thing we had learned, we didn't know how to play on grass, because once the ball hits the grass, we don't know where it's going. So Stan made the brilliant suggestion and observation, said, Reese, if we can eliminate the bounce, we can play toe-to-toe with any of these guys. But it's the damn bounce that's killing us. We don't know where the ball's going. He says, let's just eliminate the bounce. I said, you're kidding. Well, the only time we have to let it bounce is when they serve to us. Cindy, that's what we did, and we became the laughing stock of the tournament. They couldn't believe it. And then as we kept winning singles and doubles, then they were convinced we were doing something illegal. But then they checked back. They accused us of falsifying our records, and they said, where have you been? Well, I said, we've checked back 4 years. It says, oh, you never existed. I said, was you going back 5 and 6 years, you'd found out we were winning national tournaments. Well, then where have you been since then? I said, we've been sick. And they said, for 4 years? I said, yes, sir, for 4 years. That's when they began to investigate us for fraud. They felt we'd filled out a fraudulent application for the tournament. And then a month later, we won the National Clay Court. And at that point, they were convinced we were doing something illegal. They began sending doctors to Knoxville, talk to the doctor. Even the U.S. Olympic Committee came in to talk to the doctors. These guys that own something illegal. But anyway, that's the story that happened. And we just couldn't believe all of the attention from the sports writers, but they were so hard up for stories, it became a human interest story.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that, like you said, it was 4 years between you being out there and coming back. I think that's really important for other patients to hear, that your surgery, treatment, whatever it is you go through, and your recovery will take time, but you can get back on the road of life. So even if something throws you off the usual road of life, there are others who have examples of surviving being thrown into the trenches that you can use their examples, right? Like, I think that's what you're saying about you and your.
Yeah, well, I don't want to go astray on this, but you've heard me talk about if you want to have a simple life and stay in your backyard, then you'll have a flat line and it's safe and you won't learn much, but it's a safe life. But then if you decide, like Richard Halliburton said in his book, Road to Romance, and that's the one that affected me the rest of my life, but if you leave your backyard and go out on the road of life, and then there will be bumps, high points, low points, but as you go along, you learn. With each bump on the road of life, you learn more. And then sometimes you fall over in the ditch, you know how to get help, and you come back, usually with the help of others. But what happened, though, Cindy, in the process, you develop a modus operandi, a method of solving problems, and look for information. And then bump after bump after bump down the road of life, you have a cumulative effect of a program of problem solving, and that builds up into an incredible, capable person as far as problem solving, especially when you get in trouble and you fall off into a ditch by the road of life. But you have so many experiences of this as you go through life, you become more and more capable of solving problems and knowing what has worked in the past, and you have a cumulative effect that makes you your own best friend of what to do next. That was a real learning curve for me. And of course, as you know, I've traveled and lived all over the world, and with every place I've been, I was willing to take some risk, but they were intelligent risks. And the more ups and downs, I learned over and over again what works, what doesn't work. And that helped me survive some remarkable crises all over the world, most of which you know about.
Right. So if for to just review that and make sure I have that correctly, it's two things. One, your own experiences, your own multiple challenges and risks that you may have taken in life, for good or worse, or for good or bad. Those experiences inform your ability to deal with this new challenge of the diagnosis. But at the same time, you have others that as examples who have overcome a challenge like this, like a wounded healer in a way. You probably could speak a little bit more about how you unexpectedly became an example for people. But there are a lot of wounded healers out there.
What began to happen with, and Stanford and I had a remarkable story of coming back from the dead. And we realized it, and we didn't fully comprehend things, but the sports writers and others wrote about it. Even lay magazines were writing our story. But then as we began to realize that we had a story to tell, and the other patient would call, write to us, want to meet with us, and it said, your story is an inspiration to us, and it gives us hope. But then in the process, though, Sandy, we found in relating to other patients, we learned a great deal from them too. It's a reciprocal relationship, back and forth. So it wasn't just what our ability, but we learned from others. And this is a wonderful thing. I began to realize they may have called me, but in the process, as we talked, either on the phone or in person, I learned so much from them about their coping techniques. So it's reciprocal. We're down to the trenches together, and we share this information about how do you cope. And it's a wonderful, wonderful resource that we hadn't realized before until we went through it. So I'm not some guru out there preaching to people. No, I'm down in the trenches, learning like they are. And reciprocal relationship, I've learned so much from other patients, and I incorporate that into my knowledge of survivorship. But I'm right down there in the trenches with them. They help me, I help them, and that's what it's all about. We have a mutual resource that we share. Was that what you were talking about, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly what I meant. And, that is why personally I hold a lot of support groups so that patients, I'm only facilitating that patients help each other. That's really what the support group is about. But I was fascinated to read and see that you had also written that even in ancient civilizations, we had shamans, that basically that was what a shaman was too, was just a person, right? It wasn't like they had been appointed to be a shaman. They had gone through personal experiences in ancient civilizations.
Well, now, which episode are you talking about now?
I'm talking about the shaman, what a shaman was.
Okay, that's another favorite subject of mine. The shaman is a polite term for a witch doctor. But what was interesting, and I have examples of that in my file, of patients up in New York who would advance Hodgkin's disease, and the doctors in New York gave up. And so the patient went back to Africa, to his tribe, and he wanted to work with the witch doctor or the shaman. And then several years later, one of the doctors in New York went over there to see when he died. Well, he got to the tribe. He says, he's not dead. He's over here. What happened? He and the witch doctor worked together, and he survived this advanced Hodgkin's lymphoma. But then I began to study, well, what constitutes a witch doctor or a shaman? Well, for 100,000 years, in every tribe, every group of people, there'll be one or two people there who will have gotten over and dealt with enormous emotional problems, physical problems, whatever it is. And then these people were considered, they've got resources and special insight that the rest of us in the tribe need to tap into. And these individuals became the shamans of primitive tribes all over the world. You can call it witch doctors and so forth, but these are the ones that had been through a crisis, got through it, still alive, and everybody else in the tribe would come and tap into this as a resource.
Mm-hmm. Just amazing.
Was it more on that
No, I'm just thinking, I'm listening to, I'm putting together everything that you're talking about. And so it seems like the course of what happens for a patient is they need to recognize that what has happened in their past is like a rehearsal for the main event. I mean, that sounds like something you would say, know the challenges you've been through are just rehearsing you for the next challenge that comes. And the first thing to do is start gathering information and then have a quality of life. When you start to focus on living, your quality of life will change, and that will be symbolic of living. And you may even enhance your survival, and increase your hope for the future. Does that?
well, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. It's your turn.
But the big concept and revelation for me was that as I went down the road of life, as you know, I took chances all over the world, but they were calculated chances. Mm-hmm. And other people criticized me for taking chances they felt were unwise. Mm. But on the other hand, if you do your homework, figure out your odds, then often the high points, the low points, high points, low points, they seem formidable. But as you gain experience year after year with these challenges, and that's why Halliburton is that if you want to get an education, you get your high school diploma, you get a degree in college, but then after that, your postgraduate education consists of spending the rest of your life going down the road of life, learning more and more, and that's far more important than anything academically in schooling that you've had before. And he's right. But the thing that was amazing to me is that as I hit more and more of these bumps in the road, I found out I was able to solve them better and better based on my previous experiences. And this is something I've tried to share with other patients. As we deal with these bumps in the road, some of them are very serious, even if you go over in the ditch. You come back up on your own or with help, then you've learned something. And that enables you to go forward with other problems, with bumps in the road of life. It's amazing how that works on that.
Mm-hmm. So it informs you. It informs your ability to meet the next challenge.
Yes, it does. Let me explain it one other way. Yeah. And I've written a lot about this, but Stan and I talked a great deal about survival. But we came up with an interesting kind of a quote. We found that we had previous ups and downs health-wise. We didn't think they were serious, but they were early warning symptoms that maybe our bodies were out of sync. But typical male, we said, well, we can gut our way through. But episode after episode, we began to realize in hindsight that these other challenges that came up that we worked with, said it was really a rehearsal for the main coming event, which was a life-threatening illness. But the previous challenges helped us in recognizing what was going on and what we had to do to work for our survival. But that's why the other illness, other minor things were actually a rehearsal for the main coming event of a fatal illness, but we didn't pay enough attention to it to understand we weren't listening to our bodies. Mm-hmm. I keep talking about listen to your body. Your body will tell what's going on. And if something's there, get it checked. Get it checked out. And women are much better about this than men are.
So really, we should be thankful for all these difficulties we go through.
Exactly. Exactly. They prepared me for the next crisis, for the next challenge. Call it a challenge. But once you solve earlier challenges, and then you get to the big ones, you're better equipped for the main event, whatever that may be. For us, it was a terminal illness. But the previous challenges prepared us for that, so we were ready to take it on.
Beautiful.
But I think this is what we patients share with each other, the insight of all this. And I think it's terribly important. And I think another thing too, Cindy, that I've heard so many patients say, well, like Bernie Siegel said in his book, God, why me? Why did I get cancer? Why do this? And he said, don't blame God. It's just part of life. If you get hit by lightning, you're going to blame God for that? No. Lightning hits, you may or may not be in the wrong place. But the thing is, we've got to become adults. Adults means you grow up, accept responsibility, work through it, and don't blame God or other things for your illnesses, but you've got to wake up to the fact that it's your responsibility. But there's plenty of help out there, resources, intelligence and knowledge. In fact, that's where we all have an obligation to ourselves and responsibility to do our homework. That's very important, as you pointed out in one of your write-ups there.
Well,
but at the end, go ahead.
Oh, you're mentioning Bernie Siegel, and I was wondering if in your journey, he wrote some information about sense of humor, how important it was to have a sense of humor. And how has that figured into your survival?
Oh,
humor?
Well, the sense of humor is one of the things I've written about also. I think that as time goes on, I don't care how serious something is, if we can couple that with a sense of humor, then it gives us perspective. And I'll give you an example of this. It's kind of a silly one, but as you know, I'm 94 years old. I don't know how I'm still here, but I'm here. And I have a lot of good friends that have helped me. I had to quit playing tennis a couple of years ago. That was a big disappointment, but Lord, at this age, I'm just lucky to be walking around, But the thing is, as my friends realize that, one thing that Bernie Siegel said, hug everybody, because with a life-threatening illness, you may not see them again, but he said we all need a hug. So I've been hugging everybody. Anybody that stands still long enough, I hug them. He's right. Don't be afraid to show your love for other people. And that was wonderful. But as time went on, a lot of my friends said, one of them said to his wife, Reese hugged me when he got back from the hospital in New York. And he said, I've never been hugged before by a man. Well, I hugged him because I didn't think I'd ever see him again. And so his wife said, for God's sake, hug him back, and you need to get in touch with your feelings. She chewed her heart out. But, there's nothing wrong with a man hugging another one. And what Bernie Siegel said, with a terminal illness, hug everybody. Keep hugging them. We all need a hug. Well, let me tell you what happened with the sense of humor. My friends realized that I do have a sense of humor. And now they kiddingly will call me on the phone and said, is this Reese? I said, well, yes. They said, oh my God, are you still here? I said, shut up. I'm sensitive. But we laugh about the paradox. And he said, at 94, are you still here? Yeah. But we laugh about it. We joke about it. But that puts it in perspective, though, Cindy. And I love it. I love the sense of humor. And it was a Professor Steptoe at Penn State years ago that wrote the first book on body language. And one of the things he points out in his book, keep a sense of humor. And with labor management relationship, if two males lock heads in a dispute, for God's sake, have a sense of humor, learn to laugh together, and you will communicate better with everybody for the rest of your life. A sense of humor neutralizes the male dominance. And that's the biggest problem for men. Two males get together, they lock horns, but if they can have a sense of humor, they can put these aside and really communicate. But the labor management problems in the past, where they had no sense of humor, a bunch of males knocking heads with each other. But once they introduce a sense of humor, they're able to communicate better. You and I have talked about this.
Definitely. No, there's so much good information here. I think I'm going to wrap it up today for what we've covered, unless you have any particular nugget of information or a special story you want to share. You know, you're welcome to do that now. But I want to tell the listener how much I appreciate all the feedback that we're getting. And we love to hear from everybody if they have ideas or if they have some, a question for you or a topic that they would like us to cover. So just let us know. So the information of where to find us comes up with the podcast on some of the sites and some it doesn't. So I'd just like to say that you can email me at creationbalance@yahoo.com, and I can get any questions that you have for Dr. Patterson to him that way. So any other stories or nuggets that you'd like to share with us before we close today?
Well, you've asked for it, and here it is. And it's one that's kind of difficult to relate to. I can't tell the whole story, but when I was at Clark Air Force Base in the Korean War, 60 miles north of Manila in the Philippines, my mother kept telling me, said, son, you have an insatiable curiosity. Don't look under every stone to see what's underneath there. Sooner or later, something's going to come out and will bite you. Well, she was right. My curiosity did get me in trouble, but I always figured a way to get out. But one of them really was a challenge. In 1951, 2, and 3, I was in the Philippines. We were taking care of the Korean casualties going back to Europe. We'd patch them up at Clark Air Force Base there in the Philippines and send them on back to Western Europe. And the American casualty went back to the U.S. and California. But I found out an interesting story about the 5 headhunters up in the northern mountains of northern Luzon, the main island there in the Philippines. And the more I found out about them, I was very curious about them. I've heard of headhunters, but these were 5 ongoing tribes that are still there today. And a friend of mine here in Knoxville that you know, Brooks, he looked them up, and my God, they were still there, written up.
Wow.
And what I also found out about, they were a matriarchal society, Cindy, where the women rule. Now, they live in a very, very high part of the mountains in northern Luzon, and they were carrying logs up and down the mountainside, and they all had very muscular builds, especially the women. I've never even seen such muscles in a woman. It looked like NFL football linebackers. But it was a matriarchal society where the women choose their husbands. They're the leaders of the tribe. And the men are second and third class citizens. Of course, the rest of the world with women said, boy, that sounds like a great modern civilization where the matriarchal society, the women can rule everything. Well, there's some disadvantages to that, and I found that out in a hurry. My guide, who spoke the local language, said, Reese, now stay near me. These are headhunters, and they're just a few years after the World War II, when they were cutting off so many Japanese heads that came up there, the soldiers, but said, just don't do anything stupid. My God, I can't, what could I be doing stupid? Well, he just be careful. Well, suddenly one of these muscular women grabbed me by the arm and began pulling me toward a hut. I thought, well, she's just being hospitable, wants to show me part of the village. And then the guy grabbed the other arm and says, Reese, don't go in there. Come back. And he dragged me away from her. But then the other women felt that I had disrespected her, and they surrounded us, and there was a tense moment right then. And he said, in the local language, he said, please forgive my friend. he's from another part of the world called America. And he meant no disrespect at all. And then he said he didn't know that that was a marriage hunt and that she was choosing him as a husband, and he had no idea about that custom. And so he finally was able to defuse a very awkward situation.
Oh my God.
And so he said, Reese, don't leave my side again. I said, oh, I won't. I won't. He said, I just thought she was being hospitable. He said, there's much more involved than that. And so that night, I remember writing a letter home to my sweet mother, because she was always worried about me looking under the stones. And I told her what had happened. She said, oh my God, honey, get out. When you come home and you come with a headhunter wife, how am I going to explain that to my friends here in Knoxville? And my last note there was that, Mom, at least I didn't lose my head. But that was one story I've never forgotten. But it was a critical and a very melodramatic confrontation between two different cultures. Cindy, and I think what I learned just from that, a respect and admiration and interest and knowledge about other cultures. And that's why I'm so excited about Richard Halliburton and Road to Romance. Don't stay in your backyard. Go out, travel the road of life with courage, and you're going to have some ups and downs and ups and downs. And the more you have, the more intelligent and ability you have to solve those problems. That's my message.
Beautiful. I love it. I can't believe they're headhunters. That's amazing.
But just remember, I still have my head.
Unreal. All right. Well, thank you again for another entertaining, informative, and inspirational talk. And like you said, it's down in the trenches, everybody helping one another. So we're here for anybody who likes to reach out. We're available.
But thank you for the opportunity for us to share on a program like this, our individual resources, because we each learn from each other.
Absolutely. You're welcome. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.